told you this morning when we came in that we'll be looking at World Consumer Day. It is today. It is celebrated globally, and with the theme tackling plastic pollution. We've got two gentlemen in the studio to discuss that this morning. On my immediate right is a very popular public analyst, and he's also a trustee board member and director of advocacy CPAI Abeokuta. CPAI is Consumer Protection Advocacy Initiative Abeokuta. Mr. ANIMASAUN. Good morning, Mr. ANIMASAUN.
Good morning.
Good to have you.
Nice to be here.
Thank you so much.
Good morning.
We also have with us Dr. OLATUNDE OLUWATOLA. Is also Board of Trustee member of Consumer Protection Advocacy Initiative Abeokuta and retired director of FCCP Abuja. That stands for Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Commission, Abuja. Doctor, good morning.
Good morning.
Good to have you.
Good morning.
Thank you so much. Mr. ANIMASAUN, let's look at the theme for this year's celebration first and foremost. Why plastic pollution?
Yeah, ordinarily when you look at the consumer protection advocacy, you want to believe that what have we got to do with plastic pollution? Among the cardinal programs of consumer protection or World Consumer Day or consumer protections generally is environmental pollution, that means preservation of the environment. Let's put it that way. Now, how do you preserve the environment, particularly when you consider the effect of degradation that comes in with plastic pollution, the usage of plastic universally, which is not peculiar to Nigeria? Then you want to say that it's not out of place for consumer protection to venture into discussing and advocating that we need to further look at our environment as per what plastic is doing negatively to the environment, towards making sure that we have sanity and we preserve humanity generally.
Okay, let me quickly add this. From a broader perspective, what is the role of consumer protection body or bodies, all over the world?
Thank you very much. Let me bring it to context in Nigeria, for instance. You have the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria and some other umbrella bodies for the manufacturers. But the consumers, generally speaking, we are all consumers. You are also a consumer. The consumers do not have people that can kind of provide shield, kind of umbrella for them, unlike the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria. So you want to look at it and say, what becomes of our interest in the course of buying and selling, in the course of even the production? Because an average consumer has to know his right. He has to be aware of whatever he's buying. He has to be aware of his environment. He has to be aware of the information that is coming out from the products and services that he's going for. He has to be well informed. You have to have the right to education. You must have the right to seek redress and so many other things that will necessarily protect the interest of the consumers from the producers or provider of services. In essence, that is why you have the FCCPC, the Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Commission in Abuja. In essence, what one is trying to do is bring it down to the basics, because you cannot allow it to stay in Abuja and say you are protecting the consumers. You want to bring it down to the state and see how Consumer Protection Advocacy Initiative, for instance, in Abeokuta can say, we want to go the whole hog in protecting the interests of people around this place. Domesticate the law. Find a way of saying, if you have issues with whatever you have bought from somebody or whatever service that has been provided for you, if you have issues of concern in terms of quality, in terms of quantity, in terms of the cost implication, if you have issues, you can approach people like Consumer Protection Advocacy Initiative in Abeokuta, pro bono, as a matter of fact, to seek redress, to say, please help me out. I'm getting shortchanged from what I've just bought, and I need somebody to help me, because there is no umbrella body, like I said, for the consumers. It's easier for the producers to hide under whatever umbrella body they have. But we are trying to provide a kind of shield And that's why you have the CPAI, Abeokuta Consumer Protection Advocacy Initiative. Abeokuta is a non-governmental, non-for-profit organization. By the time you bring in the consumer who have bought something or have been given a service and is not satisfied, that consumer can now be asked to kind of sit down with the producer and discuss on what has transpired. If the consumer is not satisfied with the intervention that we are making, they have every right to seek redress at the higher level, which is the court of law. Ours is to play a kind of ombudsman role, a midway role between the producer or provider of services and the consumer, such that the consumer can be guaranteed value for the money that he has spent or he is spending. Because money is not something that is easy to come by. And whatever service you are getting, assuming it's a medical service, for instance, and you are not satisfied, you know the implication. It can be very grievous. Not to talk of food consumptions, medications, drugs, or services, don't let me say the service providers, or banking services, or some other things. It can even be a mechanic, for instance, that destroyed your vehicle. You have to find a way of providing shelter, succor for the consumer from possible exploitation or inadvertent exploitation by the manufacturers or service providers. But along the line comes in the issue of the environment. That's why I said the other time that it forms one of the basic cardinal programs of the consumer protection in general.
Now, talking about the environment, sir, the topic or the theme for this year is tackling plastic pollution. Now, how grave really is plastic pollution, and why should the consumer, be concerned about this? And what can the consumer do as part of its roles in reducing plastic pollution in the environment?
Thank you very much. I've appreciated our concern why plastic pollution, tackling plastic pollution becomes a consumer issue. Actually, the consumer rights groups all over the world are dedicated to highlight the power of consumers and to ensure that they have rights to fair, safe, and sustainable environment. Now, if we produce without check, you can just be concerned about the money you are making from production and choke the environment. When you choke the environment, the problem becomes everybody's, the consumers inclusive. Of course, consumers, producers are also consumers. So we choke the environment, and that's the situation that plastic is going into. Plastic is very useful. It's very ubiquitous. We can almost not do without them. But the dangers they are causing, in 2050, it is projected that we will have more plastic in the ocean than fish. All of our rivers...
Is that happening now?
I said in 2050.
Oh, 2050, okay,
yes,
2050.
In 2050, it is projected we will have more plastic than fish in the oceans. All of us witnessed the news of fish, dead fish, being washed up to ocean beaches in different parts of the world recently, in Australia, in some other parts of the world. By the time they opened them up, most of the organs were choked with plastics. Animals ingest so much plastics, and all of these things come to us. So apart from that, it constitutes so much environmental nuisance. In my own house, recently my pump packed up. The surface pump with which we pump water from well packed up. By the time they opened up, it was the impeller that has had plastic blown into it, and then the impeller ceased working. So plastic is constituting so much havoc, and if it's unchecked, will choke the world. And so last year, the campaign the consumers have was on sustainability in production and consumption generally. And this year, they decided that let us pick one of the biggest nuisance, which is plastic. Even though we can't do without it, we must begin to think of how we could remediate, reduce, reuse, recycle, and do something so that it doesn't come and choke us up. It doesn't come and kill us at the end of the day. So that's why there's this emphasis on the campaign on tackling plastic pollution. Now ask, what is the role of consumer? consumer drives production in a very fair, sane market economy. It is when consumers are satisfied, is when consumers are pleased, is when consumers accept the product and pay for the product that it becomes. If consumers say no to plastic pollution, the market will be forced, particularly the producer, will be forced to find alternatives. Research and innovation will come up. Governments will make decisions, policy decisions that will help, as it is being done in other parts of the country. So the role of consumers is to say that, look, the way we are going is dangerous. In a few years' time, we will not be available. We would have been choked by what we are buying or what we are using. So that's the role of consumers, and we want them to take up the challenge. But we equally want other stakeholders to take up the challenge. The government, the manufacturers, the producers of plastic. Let us take up the challenge that we should be thinking of how we could reduce, how we could ameliorate the dangers that plastics are constituting and what it can be in a few years' time.
Now, this theme is supposed to last for 1 year until next year when you have another theme or another focus.
Yeah.
Now, what are some of those probably programs or activities that you as a body you are putting in place to ensure that this idea, this menace that you're trying to fight or that we should be fighting, you know, is actually drummed down to the grassroots?
Thank you very much. Apart from this advocacy we are having, talking about it, we also have, without necessarily being advertorial, a kind of press conference coming up today to address the issue and present a paper to the media such that it can go widespread overall. We are also trying to discuss with the government, particularly the agencies of government that has to do with refuse disposal, for instance, in terms of separation of wastes, because that's one major factor that is really creating headache in this instance in our client. Where we lump all the waste together and we say we are doing waste collection. Of course, incinerators can do some jobs if the government have the capacity for it. We learned that there may be something in the offering in due course. But we lump our waste together, we just have it on a dump site, and that is it. And people throw garbages all around. This plastic we are talking about, you see pure water sachet all around, people throw it out from anywhere. You see plastic bottles and everything, and nobody is thinking about how do we take care of this. But if there is a particular systemic way of separating waste, not just at the final stage in this instance, the advocacy is not supposed to be only CPAI advocacy alone. It has to be general one. The people, opinion holders, the government, decision makers, practitioners, operatives of the refuse disposal and all the rest. If we are able to separate waste from source, which is being done in other climes, let me call them advanced climes, because we are not so backward. It's just that our attitude to waste disposal is the problem, and the governmental effort is not quite enough. This is not necessarily blaming any government. It's a general situation that we find ourselves. If we are able to separate our waste from source, disposable ones, plastic, garbages like vegetables and all the rest that can be turned into manure and other things, plastic apart that can be turned into something else, then it will be easier for the refuse collectors to just carry it and take it to a particular appropriate destination where it could be recycled. He talked about reuse, recycle and all those things. That is the strategy we can adopt in terms of this plastic pollution. If we are able to either reuse for something else or we recycle it for something else, because reusable is different from recycling to be reused. If you can reuse a plastic bottle without necessarily, producing other ones, clean it up and reuse it. That is reusable. You can recycle by crushing into something else. That is recycling, for something else to be used from it. I've seen instances where plastics can be crushed and recycled into block formation that could be used for building structures.
I think reuse is something that we see on a daily basis. When you go to parties, after parties, you see some young ones or some women who come around to pack them away, and they go.
That is not enough. We are talking of massive reusable that could be industrially utilized, not for all these mamas that are using it for something in the garages. You want something that is highly commercialized, that you can sensitize people into collecting and getting money for. For instance, in the Western world, the bottles can be, when you take your bottles, you take it to a particular spot, you drop it, it breaks into that container, and they come back to take it for recycling. The same thing, you can drop your plastic bottles, they reuse. Plastic bottles can be reused not only into that block formation I said, it can be even reused for vehicles. It can be reused for seats. It can be reused for anything. But if the government does not have an agenda for that, for waste separation, it will be cumbersome for the waste collectors. Of course, it is not impossible, because there are people inside the waste dumps in a standardized way that can sort it out for appropriate usage in terms of recycling. That is done, if it is not done right from source. But the best thing is to do it from source, such that it will be less cumbersome for those at the recycling plants to sort out. The same thing with papers. It can be recycled into other things, like exercise books, like tissue paper, like any other thing, like cardboards and everything. And you have woods that can be recycled into chopped woods, that the dust. There are so many furniture that are using today. If you look at the content of this table, if you break it into pieces, you see that it's dust, wood dust. It can be done. The metals can be recycled. Even concrete can be recycled into other things. But we are particularly focusing on plastic because of the dangerous effect it has on the environment in this instance. If you ask medical experts and scientists, they will tell you the carcinogenic effects, the likely carcinogenic effect of plastic, for instance. And that is why we are saying we have to look at it and tackle it from source. The government must be interested in it. It's a win-win for everybody. It's a money spinner. It brings it money. It's public-private participation. The more the government gets interested, the better for the producers and manufacturers, the better for the citizens, because we'll be well sensitized enough. And that's why we are doing our own little part to make sure that at this stage, we sensitize as much as possible the people on what we need to do to preserve our environment and to preserve humanity for the longer while.
Maybe as a motivation, it can actually be done in exchange for money.
And that's what I said, that if you have industrialist manufacturers that needs this thing for reusable or for recycling, you sensitize the people that bring it in quantities, just like those scrap collectors are doing. They bring it in. Of course, I've seen some other lorries doing plastic movement and all the rest. Sensitize the people, pay them money, and that is it. It generates employment as well.
Is there a way the federal government has actually considered this, Dr. Oluwatola? You've been with the federal government and all of that. I mean, all of these things he has actually spoken about, the involvement of government in collection of waste and recycling or reuse of.
The federal government is signatory to a lot of international treaties, and they are into all sorts of bilateral relationships. The concern of plastic usage has been with us for quite some time. Imagine 8.3 billion tons of plastic being made every year. And see the length it takes for them to be degraded. They are non-biodegradable. So the concern has been on. So the United Nations Environmental Program and different other United Nations bodies, including UNCTAD, the United Nations Trade and Development arm, have been very concerned. And in all of this, our federal government has been participating. So they've been following what has been happening. There are states, cities, and countries where plastic use are being curtailed in restaurants, hospitality, hospitality businesses. There are bans internationally on single-use plastics in very many countries now.
What has been the alternative? in those countries.
The alternative is use paper. Paper is biodegradable. So for most single-use bags, what they have done in many places is replace with plastic and with paper bags, and call it paper bags. Straws in airplanes, airlines, have been banned in many airlines, again to reduce plastic. But paper straws are also being made now. Paper is very degradable. Researchers are working very hard on developing biodegradable packaging materials, particularly in food industry. So some starch cellulosic materials can be used to make packaging which are close to plastic. Now, all these things need encouragement with policies. So the government, the federal government, I believe, will be studying these things in the world that are taking place, because the United Nations is moving very strongly to encourage whatever could reduce or mitigate the explosive use of plastic materials, knowing all its dangers. Some big companies are signing up, including Coca-Cola, Pepsi, Nestle. They are signing up to finding ways of using alternative materials or finding ways of creating avenue.
Yes, I was actually going to come to that.
Yes.
The water, you know, the way we consume water globally here in Nigeria, and soft drinks and all of that. How does this actually, how possible? You know, water everywhere. Someone could carry a bottle of water from Sokoto to Abeokuta, buy it in Sokoto and come and dump it in Abeokuta.
They will not let you carry it into the plane. They will give their own in the plane. We know it's a big problem, and this campaign is not oblivious that it's a big problem. But let us all realize that it's a big problem, so that we can start finding alternatives. You will take note that Nestle, at a point in time, were packaging water in glass bottles, small glass bottles, not using plastic. If you take note, it was in our markets. You will see that there are some that are packaging in glass materials. Now, glasses are biodegradable. They don't constitute the type of nuisance that plastic constitutes. And like I said, a number of biodegradable materials are being made from jatropha plants. You know, those jatropha plants that just grow wild. So some of them are being used to make cellulosic material. Actually, in the program we first anticipated doing, we intended to bring a researcher who is into plastic, find an alternative to plastic, to polystyrene and polyethylene, polybags. Find an alternative. We try to bring in somebody who is into that research. So research in the world are going deep into finding better alternative. Government must sign up to that, must encourage that research. They must encourage people working in finding alternatives to plastic. Otherwise, we will become a pariah state, because some other countries are already moving. So we should not wait until the time when it is only because of our packaging. Of course, we know what our packaging is doing to acceptance of our products in international trade now.
But in a country like ours, where we have lots of policy somersaults and all of that, Doctor, how do you think we can actually achieve that? One government could be very serious about this, about plastic pollution and all of that. Another government could come in and abandon it.
Yeah, that is why consumers would drive this thing. Consumers hold the power of choosing government, because we claim we have democracy. So when consumers are sensitized enough to reject a policy will not be able to stand.
Are policies ever rejected in Nigeria? Nigeria, you said it this morning. Nigeria, we are powerful.
Let me give you an example, immediate example. 2-3 days ago, petrol was going to become 212. 2-3 days ago. Nigerians rejected it. It would still happen, but for now it's put on hold. Can you get it? So, so we have that power of, and that's why consumers must not keep short. Let us research, let us investigate, let us find ways to even help government, because if you just say don't do this and you don't provide alternatives, you may put them. So let us tell people what is happening, what other climes are doing. If other climes can do, if Kenya can ban straws because they want to reduce plastic pollution, what stops us from being able to do that? What stops us from making straws from plastic and from paper? It's just because we have not been pushed. So we need to start demanding healthy policies. And part of healthy policy that we must demand is reduce plastic contamination.
Some people will also say, Doctor,
yes,
that those that are behind production, large production of all of these things you're talking about, plus the straws, are people that we also find in government. That the Senate, the House of Reps, are full of these people, and they are not the ones. They are the ones that will not make sure, you know, those initiatives don't see light of the day.
That is the very truth. When I was in the industry, so many years back, I would not mention the industry. My company says we don't mind. You can't have anything to do with government, but if you're having to do with government, will help us in what we are doing, go ahead. And so at different levels, you will see many companies employing permanent secretaries, directors into the board membership so that they can advocate for them. This is one reason why we need powerful consumer advocacy groups so that you can also meet them there. Mm-hmm. So that's why we must encourage consumer advocacy groups in this country. Let's team up with them. Let's support them with some resources they will need, just like you are doing to make us talk. So even if powerful people are there, and there are people also saying with facts and figures the ills of whatever policy, the tendencies there will be a balance. But if there is no balance and everything is about people doing what the manufacturers, producers doing whatever they want, then the consumers will be killed. It's like killing the...
There's also the question of awareness. For instance, in Abeokuta, your initiative, how much awareness do people have? Do people even know that consumers have rights, you know, and those rights could be protected?
Let me quickly do a follow-up from Doctor's submission. You see, nothing is impossible. And it may look a bit hard a task. It's a universal one, and we are trying to situate it in Nigeria as well, like we've said. It's a bit difficult, we know that, but you have to start from somewhere. And particularly talking about awareness. It's not only awareness, but enforcement as well. Practical enforcement. He was talking about the government. I talked about government as well. Yeah. The government policy has to drive this thing. If the government says, go this way, the manufacturers will have no choice than to go that way. Of course, various interests will be at stake. But that policy will encourage people like our group into a continuous awareness agenda. First thing first, the government, I'm still coming back to your question, I want to do some follow-up. There must be provision of water supply. Because the most of this thing in Nigeria, for instance, has to do with sachet water and plastic bottles, apart from nylon bags. If you have potable water supplies, there will be a reduced dependence. Apologies to those manufacturers and suppliers of pure water. As a good businessman anyway, you take advantage of where there are, shortfalls. That's what they have done. They will always find ways around it. They will always find a way around it. But if you have good potable water supply, then you can say whoever is going to use water while on the move, the moment you finish with whatever container you are using, drop it at this point. There must be waste bins. There are some small clicos that are used outside the country. You don't just throw garbage on the road. You throw it, even if it's a park. If it's a park, you throw it somewhere and they'll come and
That's
collect
what I mentioned policy somehow. So I remember, I think, was it under Buhari and Idiagbon?
Why against it?
Yeah, it was an offense.
Because it was enforced that you don't just stay somewhere and urinate, you will be caught. You don't cross the road hoping to commit suicide when there are pedestrian bridges. If you don't enforce, if it was not enforced, why wouldn't it have been impactful then? Of course, it comes with its own negative sides in terms of extremism on the part of enforcers. But whichever way you look at it, if the enforcers are not doing the job, if you have government policies and it's not being enforced by the executors, then it's zero. Now, coming back to the awareness aspect for the CPAI in Abeokuta Consumer Protection Advocacy Initiative, not long ago, about 2 quarters ago, we bought airtime on the state radio station, 13 episodes, to sensitize people. And most of, when I say we bought airtime, most of these papa are pensioners. I'm not earning from government or any company. I'm on my own. They come together and say, look, we've got to do this thing. We've got to protect the consumers. And the first thing we did was we went on air. Some people know us. Not everybody will know you, but some people will get to know you on a continuous basis and others will join later. We did a 13th episode on the state radio station. And I tell you something. Despite the fact that you are trying to do a pro bono program for the people, that if you have issues, come up. We will do our best possible for you. Nigerians were not coming up. As of this day, I could remember 2 persons who called on air to say they bought tins of milk and they opened up and they discovered that the milk were spoiled. And we said, okay, bring these cans of milk. Let's see if we can still get one that is spoiled again before we take the rest to the producer, manufacturer, or before we call them. Perhaps, Mr. Alabi, if they will come tomorrow, possibly. We did some other ones, they come. One even came to our office to complain. We said, bring it on, let's do something about it. What do you see? Nothing. They will say, oh, these people and their wahala, they're coming again. Well, I mean, I can't be going up and down and blah, blah, blah. We have a legal department. We have different departments that we are prepared to handle cases for them. It's not as if one is asking you to bring money. But we will continue to do the sensitization. We are going to buy airtime again. We will not be brilliant enough to come on TV, but we'll do our best possible as we have the opportunity. And that's why we are saying government should be able to synergize, to assist. Government agencies should be able to come and say, or we approach them and they say, we will do something. We've approached Oguama, for instance. Quite unfortunately, we know there is resources are scarce and they have a lot to contend with, particularly on this issue of environmental pollution we are talking about, plastic matter. But quite unfortunately, we are unable to get we got positive response on paper, but not as expected, and nothing comes forth from Oguama. I'm not indicting them. I can understand their predicament in terms of resources. So those are the things we are looking at. We'll continue doing our own best feasible. We hope with time we'll get there. You don't get born and you walk in a day. You crawl. You have to crawl. Yeah, and you do some other things and you stumble and fumble. You'll get there.
Now, with the level of sensitization, I mean, people have always said that it is awareness that is a problem of sensitization. Now, with the level of sensitization that you have done over time on radio, and then once in a while you have also been coming on TV to talk, and then different programs that you have also organized. What do you think will be responsible for the responses that you've got?
It's the lackadaisical attitude of Nigerians generally. Most of us, don't let me say all Nigerians, most Nigerians. We want to get things done, but we don't want to put in any effort. I've just told you, we are prepared to do things on pro bono basis.
I think the pro bono should be broken down.
Relatively free of charge.
Free of charge, yes.
That you come, we do our best possible for you, we need our own resources, and while you are not satisfied, we can move on to the next level. We have a legal department that handles the situation for you. If you are not satisfied with our legal department, you can engage your own lawyer.
Exactly. That's what pro bono means. That's what saying. What is pro bono?
Yeah, it's relatively free of charge.
Maybe that's one of the things that are really scaring Nigerians away.
Actually,
free legal service you're also offering. And I think that's quite key. You want to say something?
Yes, actually, free legal practice, free pro bono the changes, the wheel of changes grind very slowly in this country on so many issues. And I want to appeal to Nigerians. If we become lethargic because of the slowness, we would suffer for it. We need persistence. We need fastidiousness. We need determination that this one that I'm following up, I want to follow it up to the last.
Let me quickly come in, Doctor. CPAI, how vast is it in Nigeria? Are we only talking about Ogun State? Which other states of the petition?
Now, CPAI is in Nigeria, but there are also so many civil society, civil consumer rights organizations. There are so many other NGOs that are doing consumer rights. In fact, the law of the FCCPC encourages them to, the federal law encourages them to encourage formation of non-governmental organizations that are handling, that would pursue consumer protection advocacies. We just recently got registered there. So when they are doing this type of programs and they cannot reach all the way from Abuja for financial reasons, they make use of some of the NGOs in some other states. So, but this year, I'm not aware of exactly the way they are doing the campaign here.
Like he was trying to say, let me just do a follow-up to that. You see, CPAI, we have a name, Consumer Protection Advocacy Initiative, Abeokuta, for us here. Some others have different names. We are spread all around Nigeria, just like you have the Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Commission, the same goal. In Lagos, we have them. But the most important thing is find a way of domesticating the law of consumer protection in the state. And that we have been trying to do through the Ogun State House of Assembly, particularly through the Speaker of the Ogun State House of Assembly. We are hoping that the bill will pass through. We've sent in our request, our interest. We are hoping that it will get the ears of the authorities, of the people concerned, so that we can have a public hearing on it. We've been assured by the Speaker that we'll surely get it through. Once you have that, you can have an operational law that covers the people in the state, just like in some other states. Not all the states of Nigeria are already into it, but the more, the merrier. The more the consumers know that they are protected by the local laws in the state, and there are agencies that are willing to help them under that law, not just under the federal consumer law, then to be better, because FCCPC cannot come down to Ogun State to do it on their own.
Okay, well, so sorry. We have a few minutes to go, and we can never tell. Maybe someone is watching us and has one issue or the other against one commodity he or she must have bought somewhere and all of that. We'll open the line for you in the next 5 minutes. Maybe we just take 2-3 calls. So call us, and we have the men here to answer our question and to actually direct you on what to do. That's a bonus we're giving you this morning on the program. Just like 2-3 calls we'll take, and we'll move on. Dominic.
Okay, so while we await the passage of that bill that you talked about, and nothing really can happen in terms of...
No, we are functional. We are expectant of calls like this, people that have issues. We are ready, we are willing. We are the ones that approach the State of Assembly through the Speaker that we want this enabling law. We are the ones, and we still have a federal law, we still have guiding principles, so we can still work, we can still mediate. We are available 100%, 1,000,000% to assist whoever has issues with whether even banks or service providers or products or services or anything. Bring it on, let's discuss. Let's call those who are in charge of that service or production or material, then we know how far we can go with it.
Now, last year the focus was sustainable consumer. Now, how far-reaching, how far-reaching was it? Well, in terms of realizing...
You will not be able to quantify it exactly, that this is how far it has gone. We are doing our own bit. People are getting to know us, and we hope that with time, like he said, it's a gradual development. Because it's something new. Let's agree with ourselves. When you have something new going on like this, not everybody will quickly hook onto it. It's a gradual phenomenon, and we hope that with time, it will be much more appreciable.
Now, are there instances, okay?
I was just going to add that sustainable development is not only about what consumers are saying. The SDG, Sustainable Development Goals, 2 of them are on sustainable development. What we tried to do last year was to sensitize government, sensitize all stakeholders that we should be thinking of the sustainability of our actions. What we buy, what we use, we should be thinking about them so that we don't choke the planet. It borders on saving the environment, climate change issues. It borders on health.
Okay, so sorry, doctor, we have Yoriju from Lagos. Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Okay, did you get that right, Yoriju?
Yes, I'm getting you right from there. I'm getting you right now.
Okay, go ahead.
My own contribution concerning the consumer's right or no right. You know, the problem we have in this country that we're always afraid.
Okay.
The public are always afraid of intimidation. Secondly, the producers or the OSAs, they know the system of Nigeria. They don't even try to issue receipt. Whatever you buy, because they too know if they have the condemned expiring product with them, they will not give receipt out. Thereby, if we even have any consumers that even want to take the action, before you get to them, it's not God, it's happened to me. Before I reported coming to them, they denied it that the product is not sold from their offices. The only thing that I will ask the government to do, they want to mandate every OSA to issue receipt out, and now to try to enlighten the public. You cannot sit down and you die like that. Silence is keep your mouth down is part of the silence. That's my own contribution.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, doctor,
Thank you.
One Nigerian, I think he said Nigerians are not afraid to.
They are afraid.
People are afraid. How long will it take?
Yeah.
And would they also victimize them? That's why they need to take advantage of advocacy groups. So there is a way that if advocacy groups take up matters for them.
But are there cases of people who took all of these big manufacturers to court and then these people won, they were compensated?
No,
that alone.
No, there have been cases of people who have taken producers to court and they have won.
Oh, okay.
There have been cases of people, I worked for 9 years, 10 years in Federal Consumer Protection Council, which now is Federal Competition Consumer Protection Commission. And people got redresses. People who bought cars and cars did not work got redresses. While the cases were on, they were given cars to be using until the cases were sorted out. Some cases took 2-3 years and they were given. So dare to complain. Dare to complain. It's a challenge to us. Dare not to be silent.
Yeah.
That's the way we can break the yoke.
All right, that's it. Yeah, one more. They say the journey of 1,000 miles starts with a step. If you don't take that step, you will continue to lament. You will continue to complain. Come out of your shells. You may not be able to do it alone if you are afraid. Come out. Let some people help you. This is a group. A group cannot easily be intimidated. If you intimidate us, you are over ranking me. That's the truth. Because we will not relent. People like me, you should know me. We will not relent.
Okay, tackling plastic pollution, that's the theme of this year's celebration, 2021 World Consumer Rights Day. I'll be having in the studio Dr. OLATUNDE Oluwatola, Board of Trustees member of Consumer Protection Advocacy Initiative, Abeokuta, and retired director of FCCPC in Abuja. Thank you so much, Dr. Oluwatola.
It's a pleasure.
And of course, we must also thank you so much, Mr. ANIMASAUN, Public Affairs Analyst and Trustee Board Member and Director of Advocacy CPAI, Abeokuta. Thank you for coming.
Nice being here. Thanks for accepting us.
Indeed.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. Dominic.
Now, we also thank our viewer for staying tuned to the People's Daily, 6:30 when we open the studio up till this moment. Now we are touching down. We thank you so much. Otunjo will come your way tomorrow. From myself, Dominic Agbeha, and Biodun Alabi, we are saying do have a fantastic day.
find yourself in Abdel